broke, where there wasn't even enough money for my salary that was provided by the government. Volunteers have been a critical labor force, and they were my only labor force for many years. We have 6 sea turtle species that occur in Texas. Our waters provide important foraging and migratory habitat and internesting habitat, and our beaches are important for nesting. Our green turtle is likely our most abundant turtle in Texas waters. It's mostly herbivorous. We have friends on the webinar today that deal with a lot with foraging of green turtles, foraging grounds. At the National Seashore, we have seagrasses where they forage, as well as our Mansfield Channel is at our southern boundary, and it's lined with jetty rocks. Algae grows on the jetties, and they feed on that. Our inshore waters are very important developmental habitat for green turtles. Green turtles were once commercially harvested in Texas, and between severe freezes and over-harvesting, they caused the population of green turtles in Texas to be decimated by the year 1900. But they have started rebounding, probably starting in about 10 to 15 years ago. Our numbers really started jumping up. We have between 1 and 36 green turtle nests found in Texas per year. So the juveniles occurring in Texas are primarily not from Texas. Some people will say, oh, Donna, you've done such a great job. Look at all these green turtles. I can't take credit for those. They were born elsewhere. We work to help protect them when they're here, but and we saved a lot of them during cold stunning that we'll talk about. But as far as them being born here, no, most, according to the genetics work, are born in Mexico. So we deal mostly with stocks that are a shared resource with Mexico, Tamaulipas and Veracruz, Mexico. Our green turtle nesting appears to be increasing in Texas, but we need more years of data. And so the green turtle is a threatened species. Next species, the loggerhead turtle, I'm not going to talk much about. We don't deal with too much other than with strandings. They eat mostly invertebrates, and we have 1 to 15 loggerhead nests per year. The hawksbill, you're likely familiar with. It's an endangered species. It eats mostly sponges, occasionally seen at the jetty rocks. And we've only had 1 hawksbill nest confirmed in Texas. It was at the National Seashore in 1998. The leatherback, endangered. It eats mostly jellyfish. It's in a whole different family. It's very fast growing, undergoes deep dives, very long migrations. There are records of it nesting here at Padre Island National Seashore in the 1920s and 30s in our area called Big Shell and Little Shell, which has a deeper water approach, and the beach is steeper with a lot of shell hash in the sand, and that's where they nested. We've only had 1 recent nest in 2008 at the National Seashore. We'd love to see them repopulating, but time will tell on that. And the olive Ridley, we have recent records in the Gulf of Mexico of olive Ridleys. It's a threatened species. It occurs mostly in the Pacific and other areas. Only 1 record in Texas of a stranded individual. And we'll see again over time whether we get more of these, but it is quite rare in the Gulf of Mexico. The Kemp's Ridley is the world's most endangered sea turtle species. It is the one I'm going to talk about the most, and that our volunteers help with the Kemp's Ridley and the green turtles the most. They're mostly crab eaters, mature at 10 to 15 years of age. They're the smallest and the lightest of the sea turtles. They nest mostly during the day, and I tell our volunteers, if you like a challenge, you're in the right place, because finding the nests of Kemp's Ridley is the most difficult of any of the sea turtle species, because they're the smallest and the lightest. They leave a faint track. They tend to nest on days where the tracks blow away quickly due to ambient conditions of very strong winds. the passage of fronts. They nest either right before, during, or after. There's these times when we have the lightning and the 60-mile-per-hour winds and the hail. Yeah, they like those days. So, and another complicating factor is it can tend to be feast or famine, where we have days of nothing, and then these synchronous emergences called arabatas, where the turtles are up on the beach at the same time. And in Texas, our arabatas are diffuse. They're spread out over space and time within a day, but we are seeing arabata behavior start to form here. They nest on average, the recovery plan says every 2 years, but we've been finding in recent years on average every 3.5 years. And they can nest anywhere between 1 and 3 times within a nesting season. And there have been about 300 nests confirmed annually in Texas, and Kemp's Ridley is our most abundant nester. When I first started here at Padre Island National Seashore in 1980, we'd only find 1 nest on the Texas coast every 3 years. So the numbers have grown. Really excited about that, but it's still a critically endangered species. So is my movie gonna work? Probably.
Yes, be sure and click to turn on the sound.
There isn't a sound on it, and looks like the animation is probably not going to work on this. Nope. So there was for many years, it wasn't known where Kemp's Ridley's nest. Maybe it's even a hybrid. Dr. Henry Hildebrand heard of a famous film that was made in 1947 that showed an estimated 40,000 Kemp's Ridley females nesting on this small stretch of beach called Rancho Nuevo in Tamaulipas, Mexico. This film was made by a Mexican engineer, and you can see in this photo his plane that was that flew over that he was looking for these arabatas, and he finally filmed one. He couldn't get any media attention about his film, and it wasn't discovered to science until Dr. Hildebrand located it in the early 1960s. And then it made a big splash scientifically, because finally this nesting beach was found for this species. But when biologists went to the beach, they found that the numbers of turtles nesting had plummeted, and it had plummeted by the 1960s due to the large-scale taking of the eggs from the beach as a supposed aphrodisiac, and the loss of juveniles and adults incidental to fisheries operations, primarily shrimp trawling. So in the mid-1970s, it was feared that Kemp's Ridley was going to go extinct unless immediate steps were taken. So Robert Whistler was the chief naturalist at Padre Island National Seashore and lived a couple of doors away from Dr. Hildebrand, and learned about the sea turtles from him and the plight of the Kemp's Ridley. And one of the projects that was inserted into our 1974 resources management plan at Padre Island National Seashore was the effort to form a secondary nesting colony of Kemp's Ridley turtles at Padre Island National Seashore as a safeguard against extinction, so that if a political or an environmental catastrophe was to occur at this main nesting beach, Rancho Nuevo, there'd be a safe area in the U.S. where Kemp's Ridleys could nest and be protected. And National Seashore is shaded in red here. It preserves the longest stretch of undeveloped barrier island beach in the United States. And Kemp's Ridley is a native nester here. So from 1978 to 1988, we had an experimental program where we tried to imprint Kemp's Ridley turtles to Padre Island National Seashore in hopes that they would come back to nest here when they reached adulthood. So from 1978 to 1988, we had 22,507 of those eggs collected from Rancho Nuevo, packed in Padre Island sand, brought to the National Seashore for incubation and imprinting. This was experimental. It was a conservation emergency. Many people thought it might already be too late, and the Kemp's Ridley was doomed to extinction. And what I tell folks now is I'm wearing for inspiration my father's graduation ring from the Naval Academy, 1947, the same year that film was found. And in one human generation, him to me, when I graduated from Cornell in 1981, the population had plummeted and was almost thought to be headed into extinction. And I believed that I wanted to dedicate my career to trying to help save the species, because it was due to human activities that we almost lost it. This magnificent species within a blink of an eye. So in 1986, I took over this program here. I was permanent, worked my way up to being permanent, had my master's degree. And I was also named as acting division chief for 9 months. And the superintendent said, I want you to start the patrols for the program. Well, we were destitute. We had to beg vehicles from other divisions and military surplus mules from the Vietnam era. And then it's not the animal, but the vehicle called a mule. And it was rough and it was something, but we did what we could to try to go out and find the wild and the turtles from this experimental project nesting, because we caused them to nest there. And so I felt like we had an obligation to not only find out scientifically whether that program had worked, and also to protect the nesting turtles on our beach, because we influenced them to nest here. So we need to protect them. So I began the patrols here at the National Seashore in 1986, and they expanded. I helped them expand to other areas on the Texas coast, starting in the late 1990s. And now all Texas Gulf beaches are patrolled to some extent during the Kempsterly nesting season, which is late March through mid-July. We use various types of vehicles and walking patrols in the heavily visited areas, and volunteers are critical to this work. And here's our total of the number of hours spent in 2020 patrolling the Texas beaches for nesting. We go back and forth during the day, canvassing these Texas beaches, trying to pass a given point every 45 minutes, because that's all it takes for these turtles to nest. We want to see them so that we can conduct a marker capture program for the nesting turtles. So the nests are found on the Texas coast because of our patrols and also because of reports from the public. So we spend a tremendous amount of time trying to provide training to all our and these turtles don't have complete site fidelity. So there are some, about 5% of the turtles are what I call roamers. They will nest in North Padre Island, South Padre Island, North Padre Island, Mustang Island. And they don't recognize these geographic boundaries of these beach areas we categorize. They're a shared resource. So we need to work together to protect these turtles. So we train the others that are working on these other programs, and then other people working on the beach during the nesting season, like lifeguards, beach maintenance crews, because sometimes they find these nesting turtles. They nest quickly, 45 minutes, they're in and out, and it's even faster during the summer because they're reptiles and their body temperature varies with the air temperature or water temperature. So when it gets hotter, they nest more quickly. So we want to get those reports from the others working on the beach, and we want to make sure that those others don't inadvertently harm those turtles by rushing up to them and causing them to go back into the water, not nesting, called a false crawl, or God forbid, to run over them with their beach maintenance equipment. And then a lot of work with educating the public, because the public ends up finding about, it varies between nesting area, but some areas it's 50% of the nests are found because of reports by the public. And at the National Seashore, it's about 20% of our nests, because most of our beaches are very remote. But we spend a lot of time educating the public through brochures, websites, social media, presentations, media interviews. And I do about 50 media interviews per year. And they're a great resource to us, helping to spread the message to much wider masses than I can reach just by my in-person presentations. And we've also got YouTube channel, and if I'd be glad to exchange email addresses with you, and you can see our Facebook page and some of our social media. The Patrols looking for these nesting turtles are complicated because of characteristics of the patrol areas and characteristics of the nesting by Kemp's Ridleys. The complications for our patrols is we've got 5 patrol programs that cover the whole Texas coast, more than 300 miles of Gulf beaches. These are large stretches. Our program at the National Seashore, we cover about 80 miles of beachfront. We have no road behind the dunes for the southernmost 60 miles of beach. And we've got what's called the Texas Open Beaches Act, where our beach is driven on by the public, most of our beaches. And Texans think it's their God-given right. So despite what Tim or I might feel about beach driving personally, it's there. And so we have to manage with the reality of the situation that we have, which is we need to share this world. We've got to educate the beach drivers so that the do's and don'ts, how they can help us, and so they don't harm these turtles inadvertently. Complicated because of this remote area. And then sometimes we've got large amounts of debris that wash up on our beach, large amount of sargassum seaweed or boards with nails in them and trash. Sometimes our detection can also be complicated if other people drive over the tracks before they see them, or they walk over them, or there are horse tracks over them, or the beach maintenance crews get there before we do and obliterate them before we get to see them. So we have to train those beach maintenance crews, and some of them are all in, and where they know the turtle, the exact turtle they found for us 3 years ago at this mile marker. And that's great. That spreads our efforts. It helps us out tremendously. Detection is also complicated by the characteristics of the Kemp's Ridley nesting. They nest on windy days, as I said, inconspicuous nests, not like the green turtles where there's a big pit and a mound, easy to see. Not so with Kemp's Ridley. They just flatten the area, tamping down the sand. The visitors will say, I saw a turtle dancing. Okay, I know it nested. I know what you mean. Turtle was rocking back and forth. They blend in with the sand and vegetation. They nest very rapidly, and they have this synchronous nesting pattern of coming up on the beach at the same time. So what have we found? We found an increase in nesting over time, which I'm thrilled about. We've got these Padre Island imprinted head started turtles from the experimental project that I told you about. We've had some records of those, and that was a happy day in 1996 that I found the first one. So remember, I started the patrols 1986. It was a full 10 years of patrolling before we found the first confirmed returnee from this project. And I felt like, for those of you who know the movie Snoopy, Linus in the pumpkin patch saying, have faith, it will come, the great pumpkin. And I said, the nesting turtles are going to come. And some of the volunteers I know probably thought I was crazy, but we indeed, with time, we've had nesting increase, and we did have some of these turtles from the experimental project come, but most of our nesting is by turtles from the wild stock. We also have another group called the Mexico imprinted head starts, where those were hatchlings taken directly from Mexico and head started with the hope that they would go back to nest in Mexico in larger numbers to help compensate for the loss of the Mexico population for those eggs for the Padre Island population for the experimental effort to form the secondary nesting colony here. But those turtles didn't read the book, and most of them ended up nesting in Texas. So we're happy to have them all. So you see this pattern of increase. We were thrilled. The Kemp's Ridley plan, I was on the recovery team, predicted a continued exponential increase of the population. But it was written in the late 90s the 2007 to 2009. And in 2010, we had a decline in the number of nests found. That was not predicted. And then the numbers came back up, and they fluctuated ever since. And it's not known exactly why we had that decline in 2010. The Deepwater Horizon spill was then, but we believe, based on my satellite tracking work, the females leave the foraging areas in the winter. So the turtles that were going to nest in 2010 had already departed the foraging area when the spill occurred. This spill occurred in the Kemp's Ridley for the prime foraging area for adult Kemp's Ridleys. So although we don't think that the spill affected the turtles nesting in 2010? Yes, most certainly it had effects for the Kemp's Ridley population after 2010, because with fewer turtles nesting that year, that left more turtles taking the year off from nesting and remaining in the foraging grounds that were potentially exposed to the oil. And then there were also juveniles killed and likely a loss of eggs. And you could have days of presentations just on that spill. The Kemp's Ridley stock is considered one genetic stock and one management unit with our partners in Mexico. They've got far more turtles nesting there. We never anticipated outstretching them, but we are there building. We're not there yet, but we're an endangered species success story in the making and a secondary nesting colony in the making. Our numbers track very well with the annual numbers found in Mexico, but we have increased proportionally in the last few years, which may be related to the fact that they started 15 years ago leaving a portion of their nests in situ, just left on the beach unprotected, whereas we've continued to protect all of ours. We get a higher hatching success. This may be reflected there. But the drumbeat is very loud, Debbie and all of you there, for us to relocate or to stop relocating our nests in Texas to be like Florida. Just kick the vehicles off, Don, and then you can leave the nests. Well, just kicking the vehicles off the beach will not be enough to leave the nest, because we still have predators and nuisance coastal flooding, which is increasing exponentially on the Texas coast and is a huge threat to our nests. So it's not that simple. And the people that want it either to save money, to slow down our project or stop it to save money, or to make it easier for them in Florida so that they don't have to explain to those people in Florida why they can't do what we do in Texas. Our program works. It's a mitigation measure that allows conservation and public access at the same time. And I keep trying to hold on as long as I can, but it's a tough battle right now. And here's a correlation between the numbers in Mexico and Texas, and they're very highly correlated. Most Kemp's Ridley nesting in the US is in Texas, but there is a handful in Florida, and the first nest that they found in Florida, they thought they might be head-started individuals. There's loads and loads of publications on that. And a handful of Kemp's Ridley nests up the Atlantic seaboard, and some in the panhandle of Alabama. And I've got another publication that discusses why I think we've got some of this variation and where these turtles went in. And I'd be glad to share that with you. There's not time to talk about some of the reasons why we think that occurred. And most of the nesting is in South Texas, which is a documented historic nesting ground of the species. And especially at PAIS is the government abbreviation for the National Seashore. And we have 52% of the US nests are found here. So we have more nests than in all other areas in the US combined. So we are the most important Kemp's Ridley nesting beach in the US. A secondary nesting colony is becoming established, but we're not there yet. When you look at the number of nests by all the species here, you see most of the nests in Texas are on North and South Padre Island. The largest number of green turtle nests are here at the National Seashore as well. And when you look at the wild and head started, most of the head start nests, the ones we wanted to come back to the National Seashore to nest, most of them have. And so from a scientific standpoint, it was important. And I was invited over to the Canary Islands to help advise them because they wanted to do an effort similar. And so from a scientific standpoint, this work has been important for those others that might want to adopt those practices for a similar situation. The nesting colony goes in a blink of an eye, though, or the nesting season for the Kemp's Ridley. The main part of the nesting season is only about 8 weeks long. So when Marty comes and asks me for a presentation in May or June, I cringe. I'm like, oh, it's the nesting season. I don't know if I can do it. But luckily from this remote way of doing it now, it's a lot easier, Marty, to commit. But I like to leave myself free, my schedule free, so I can be here for those 8 weeks, because you could have a third of your nests on one day. You don't want to be gone for that one day that a third of your nest might be found.
Donna, we have about 15 minutes
Yep.
left.
Okay, and we're going to go massive now. So that's the context of the work, and you could see how labor intensive it is. So as our numbers have increased, it's been crucial we have volunteers support our work, and I say there's a place for everyone in our volunteer program. So they help with everything from preparing our incubation boxes to helping at the turtle releases, to handing out bumper stickers, to helping with patrols, to helping with egg incubation, to helping with hatchling releases. Who are our volunteers? Everywhere from private citizens, retirees, students, families, alternative spring break groups, scout groups. We give free training, either on-site or online. We give it lectures 2 times a year for cold stunning and for nesting and hatching season. We give hands-on training. We teach them how to pack the nests. Those are what we call our egg runners. Those are mostly volunteers, either our Student Conservation Association interns. That's how I started. And that's what formed my whole career, was starting as a volunteer. So that's big inspiration for my volunteers. And we have UTV training and in-class training. Our volunteer requirements, they've got to be at least 18 years old, have a valid driver's license, and commit to at least 10 hours of work each month for a season for our volunteers, either for the cold stunning or for the nesting, because our training is a long period, it's a big class, it's a big commitment of our time, and it's in demand these classes fill. And we don't want to fill with people that aren't going to commit. Some people just want the shirt. You don't get the shirt until you put in your 10 hours. Volunteers are because that shirt's prestigious. I volunteered with the program. So they're vital with assisting with all our efforts. We couldn't get our programs done without our volunteers. Our volunteers are our dispatchers. That's our lifeline, getting all the calls as the patrollers pass back and forth all day long on the beachfront, knowing where they're located, doing our walking patrols up in the northern part of the section of our route, being paired with our staff for our front country patrols, our North Patrol and our South Patrol. So they're the driver, and our paid staff member is the passenger. So they can divide, and you've got a driver concentrating on driving and a spotter. We have volunteers assisting with, so they're paired. They see a nesting turtle, they help with recording the data. They love it. They absolutely love it, and take ownership. They want to see the hatchlings from their clutch released, and we try to work that out now. It's more difficult with larger numbers of nests. These turtles are hard to find. We need the help of these people. They help before the season starts with preparing the boxes, as I said. They help in our incubation facility. I've got a volunteer who's my right-hand assistant. She's been with me for 15 years. She helps me with monitoring the eggs. I don't trust that to just anybody. That's somebody who earned that honor of helping me with incubating most of the Kemp's Ridley nests found in the US, right there in my facility. Transport of eggs from other areas in the state, they aid with that. They aid with the hatchling releases. This is the frosting on the cake at the end, seeing the little babies released. And they love it. Most of the people helping at these hatchling releases are volunteers. And we have about 15,000 people come to these releases held at the National Seashore each year. There's 20 to 25 of them. They have been open free of charge to the public. The park may start charging for them, which disappoints me, but I'm not the superintendent. These are very, very popular. We have people traveling from overseas on their bucket list. They drive across the country. About $1 million of ecotourism revenue is generated from these releases. And here, the baby turtles, I never grow tired of seeing them scamper into the water. They're about the size of a silver dollar. And we announce our releases on our social media, on our hatchling hotline, our website. And down on South Padre Island, they have them as well. And it's not turtles on demand. It's not show and tell. They all go at their proper time. So I'm monitoring them and I'm guessing when I think they're going to go into frenzy and be ready for release. They help with paperwork, data entry. They help in the lab with collection of specimens, logging of specimens, shipping them off. Cleaning. I say, well, cleaning the diapers, it's a joke, but it's like the incubation boxes so that we can use them to transfer hatchlings into. They help with the stranding and salvage network. For the stranding and salvage network, it's a national network. Live turtles are documented and brought to rehabilitation facilities like Tim's phenomenal facility that has a great success rate of saving most of the individuals that go to his facility and then they're repatriated. What a success story. And the dead turtles, that's the more depressing side of the work we do, and we get a lot of them. They're salvaged oftentimes for necropsy and study, trying to make the best of a bad situation by learning from them what killed this turtle, what was it eating, what's the size, etc. And as I said, I'm the coordinator, so I help coordinate efforts in the state, maintain the records. Here's our numbers. Look at this. It used to be in the 80s and 90s, loggerheads and Kemp's Ridleys were our main stranding turtle, and it felt like it was overwhelming with those animals found then, a lot due to incidental capture due to shrimping. Working with the shrimpers, those numbers have been held either steady or declining. We have about a stable number of adult female Kemp's Ridleys found stranded on the Texas coast, but the number of those big loggerheads has gone down, and the turtles obviously due to incidental capture due to shrimping has declined. But this large green bars, the years with the largest numbers are our cold stunning events where we need our volunteers because we've got huge areas we've got to canvas looking for turtles. That the cold stunning is when they become incapacitated due to the cold temperatures in these inshore waters where there's a long distance to get out from the few passes we have between these inshore waters and the Gulf of Mexico. They get to the Gulf, they can find warmer waters out further from shore and down further south. But in the inshore waters, they cool very rapidly. They can't get out, they're trapped, they float to the surface. If they're not found, they can die due to boat strikes, incapacitation, or predation. And it's a grisly death. So we work really hard to go out and find them from these events. And I'm going to just pass by these in the interest of time. Here, this shows for the green turtles, cold stunning. It is, I don't think this has been updated. This has not been updated correctly. This is an older graph. The majority of our cold stunning is majority of our green turtle strandings is due to cold stunning. This isn't as striking as it should be. These are older. And most of the cold stunning is in inshore waters. Volunteers, critical year-round with our stranding activities. Strandings occur year-round, but this cold stunning is in the winter months. And our volunteers are the primary people that go out and help us find these turtles and bring them in for documentation, or those very experienced ones learn how to document them themselves. Cold stunning, huge numbers. We had more than 13,000 cold stun turtles that were found during the winter of 2020 to 2021. It's, we believe, the largest sea turtle stranding event recorded in the world since 1980. It's certainly the largest cold stunning event recorded in the US. And we need lots of help, and volunteers are phenomenal. They come out, they help, and we absolutely could not do it without them. So thanks to the hard work of many people, Kemp's Ridley nesting has increased in Texaco and Mexico, but the numbers leveled, they declined, they rebounded slightly in recent years. We must go out and locate, document, and protect those nesting turtles, the eggs, and the hatchlings if we are going to recover this Kemp's Ridley and see this secondary nesting colony become established. South Texas is the documented historic nesting range for Kemp's Ridley in the U.S., and most Kemp's Ridley nesting in the U.S. continues to be here. We're a very important habitat for Kemp's Ridley nesting, green turtle nesting, and the backside for these green turtles in our inshore waters. And what I say is, we're the Archie Carp. Tim, we got to have this catch on. North Padre and Padre Island National Seashore, we're the Archie Carp of the Western Gulf. We just have you build it and they will come. They built the refuge around where nesting was occurring. We had the seashore, and then it became repopulated with nesting. Juvenile green turtle population is increasing rapidly in Texas, but again, with them, we've got to continue to locate, document, and protect the stranded turtles, especially during the cold stunning events. We had a tough time finding these turtles alive. The temperatures were so brutal during this event, and there were advisories that didn't enable us to get in the water quick enough. And we only found about 33% of the cold stun turtles from this event alive. They were repatriated to the Gulf, and some have already gotten back into the bays, but it's going to take a while for our juvenile population to rebound.
We got about 5 minutes left.
Okay, so this is how people report. Volunteers are critical, and I thank you. That's it. So as you can see, volunteers, we couldn't do our work without our volunteers. I love our volunteers. Our volunteers have helped keep me going during the darkest of days when I was so depressed, and their enthusiasm and dedication continue to inspire me. So that's it. Thank you.
Question time. So would you, Donna, will you send me a copy of that presentation and I can make it available?
Sure.
And take that off the screen now and see if anybody has questions, okay?
I'm going to try to take it off.
Is
it off? Oh, okay, great. Now you can see my face too.
I think if you have questions. So Sue, you're the one that can ask questions. So you can ask questions for at this time now, okay?
Yeah. Thank you for your presentation.
Welcome.
Can I know more about the cold stone, about the sea turtle in this March? Because we all saw the news on the internet, and I was curious, how did you rescue such a huge number of the sea turtle in this March?
It was very, very challenging because our cold stunning here, unlike in Florida, it's in 2 spots. In Texas, it's stretched coast-wide. We have boat patrols that go out and look for these turtles. And we also have foot patrols on shorelines where they're accessible. But like the front side, the back side of our island is very remote without boat docks. So we rely on boat surveys, and we found from this event we couldn't get, I will talk about one of our failures is because of small craft advisories, we couldn't get out until about a day and a half later after those on South Padre Island because we were relying on boats. Now we've mapped out all of our roads to the back side of the island, and we're going to have to be doing some area by foot patrol. And my staff were like, oh, we can't do, but people in Texas aren't used to walking. Well, we're going to have more walking because sometimes you can't get out in the boats because of the coastal flood advisories. But we had agencies that normally don't help with the cold stunning. They assisted, volunteers assisted, the rehab facilities, the stranding programs, and the public. We got the word out to the public, and they become deputized. We say, if you find them, just call us, and you won't get in trouble if you're bringing them in from these remote areas to us. So it just took a lot of people going out and bringing them in. Also, we had to bring in at the beginning those that were motionless that might have been dead because some of them, they took 2 days of warming before we knew they were alive. That was really, that really complicated the situation. And it was so cold at the beginning that the predators didn't get out after them at first. So you couldn't tell if they were alive or dead by the wounds we oftentimes see that makes it obvious that one is dead. But yeah, a lot of footwork and a lot of boat work.
We have time for one more question, and then we're going to have to switch to Tim. Does one of your colleagues have a question?
Or without a question, I could fill up a little bit of time. I was intrigued by the pictures for the different turtles because you're matching scale patterns on the green turtles because they've got a different pattern. And I did some of that for my dissertation work. Now there's some publications proving that that is of utility, that it's those scale patterns stick with the turtles and they are distinctive. So good for you for doing that. It's interesting. It's almost like a fingerprint, the scale patterns on those green turtles, so that the citizens could take pictures for you and you can identify your different individuals through that. So that's great. It's a good use of help.
Donna, we're going to switch to Tim, and I wanted to, after Tim's finished, we're going to have a little closing time, and if you want to stick around, it'll be time.
Sure.
Because the problem is it's getting kind of late in Taiwan.
Yep.
So we'll have a closing time, and the closing time can be 1 minute or 15 minutes, depending on the group here. So Tim, I think would you like to take over? It's your turn.
Sure. Yeah, we can kind of go through a few things. I'm working off of my iPad, so I can kind of walk around and show you guys a few different things around the facility. So I'm not hooked up to my computer to have a presentation like Donna's, but I think Donna did a great job of giving you guys kind of an idea of what we're dealing with here in Texas specifically, and kind of the state of the situation here with sea turtles. So where I come in and where the Texas Sealife Center comes in is a little bit different, but it ties into what Donna's doing. And I'll certainly hit a little bit on the volunteerism aspect as well, because without that, we could not do what we do every single day. We essentially kind of give you a little history behind the Texas Sealife Center. I've been a veterinarian for about 20 years. I've done sea turtle work my entire life. I started doing it in Florida and then moved to Texas and saw that there was a need here for another veterinarian in the area. So I started doing the veterinary work here for sea turtles and at another facility called the Ark out in Port Aransas. And so whatever hospital I was working at, Tony, who ran the facility, was always bringing me sea turtles. And the hospitals that I was working at had to charge him for it. So we charged him for x-rays, we charged him for medical care. And so there was an expense there. And because of that expense, I decided that we needed a place where essentially we needed a hospital that was dedicated to wildlife and specifically sea turtles, where it didn't cost them anything. So that's where the Texas Sealife Center, the idea came from, is we needed somewhere that didn't cost money to the rehab facility to rehabilitate and hospitalize and treat these turtles. So we, with the support of Donna and Tony out at the Ark, at that point in time, we opened up the Texas Sealife Center. We found a little piece of property. It's a little double wide trailer. It's not a big place, but it's our place. And then behind our facility, we have a nature trail also, which I would take you back there, but the Wi-Fi doesn't reach and the mosquitoes would probably carry me away today. We've got really, really bad mosquitoes right now on the island. So, but I'll take you around the hospital here in a second after I kind of give you a little bit more of a background on the Sealife Center. So we opened up in 2013 with a wing and a prayer. And myself and my better half, Amanda, she's a licensed veterinary technician. So together we had the medical knowledge and big enough hearts to try and get this thing up and running and off the ground. So we had our first pool. We got that all set up and raised a little bit of money, and but a lot of money in the first 4 or 5 years came out of my own pocket, which is fine. That's something we wanted to do. And we've slowly grown now to the point where we have probably close to $400,000 worth of tanks, filtrations, equipment to be able to house. We've got 7 hospital pools now. We can house almost probably pushing it, we could probably house about 80 turtles comfortably before it starts to get a little bit tight, a tight squeeze, which we dealt with the Cold Stone event here recently. So as far as getting volunteers, we usually have at any one point in time a core group of volunteers of about 12 people. And they do, as Donna was alluding to earlier with her group, they have to do everything. They're scrubbing the dishes, they're building new enclosures, they're repairing the, anything that might be damaged. They're feeding the animals. They are, you name it, they're having to do it. So everybody loves to work with the animals and work with the turtles or work with the birds, but there's also the cleaning aspect, which is probably the majority of it, and feeding and food prep and things like that. So what I will do is I'm gonna try and stand up with my iPad, flip the screen if I can, and I'm gonna take you through a couple areas of the hospital. So now remember, we are not a multi-million-dollar facility. We are a small facility working out of a trailer, so we have to pack ourselves in here a little bit, including the turtles. So I'm leaving the office now. Okay, let's see if I can turn it around. There we go. Okay, so I just left the office. I'm not going to show you the office because it's messy, but we've got one of our smaller Kip's Ridley sea turtles in here. This guy, as you can see, he's circling in one direction. You see how he's always turning to the right? I'm not going to upset him too much. But essentially, he was one that we think he either has some type of head trauma or there's parasites or something else. So we're treating him currently for that condition. He's actually gotten better. Used to, he would flip himself over, but he's gotten a little bit better. This is our first original hospital tank. Okay. We got some bird cages back over there too. So like I said, we kind of multi-purpose area here. This is our food prep area. This is another guy here that came in. This one, Donna, I believe, came from the National Seashore. And this is kind of, when they initially come in, this is kind of what we see. I'll get a little closer here so you guys can see. But you can see all the barnacles, all these little tiny barnacles on their shell. And when they strand and when they're, floating in the water, you'll see a lot more barnacles show up on these guys. When we initially bring them in, they're usually dehydrated. So we'll put them in shallow water like this because a lot of times they can't dive or even can't surface to breathe. So we'll put them in shallow water. A lot of times we'll start them out in fresh water to get them rehydrated. He's saying hi. There you go. Okay. So, and that's all we really allow them to do, or all they can do initially when they come in. When they do come in, we do perform blood work. We also perform x-rays, which I'm going to show you there. That's our x-ray machine. This is our surgery suite, which is under construction right now. So with our surgery suite, we just got a new anesthesia machine. So that's why we're putting this one in. We're moving the old dinosaur anesthesia machine out. And then this is also doubles on the backside back there. It doubles as our laboratory. So we have some of our laboratory stuff over here as well. But this is kind of where we have to, make do and make it work. So until we get a bigger facility someday, I'm going to walk you out into, so this whole area back here, I'm going to turn around, that I just showed you. This is all the hospital portion. Okay, this is not, the public does not have access to this area back here. So of course the public wants to see turtles, the public wants to see animals. So what we've done is we do have another area up here, and this is our public access area. So people come in, when people come in, they take a tour. We have scheduled tours throughout the day. Every half hour we offer tours, and so people call and make an appointment to have a tour. And then they come in, and that's how we make our money right now. Is it's about $7 a person for a tour. Because of COVID, we limit the number of people in a tour, so we limit it to 10 or less. And we usually like to keep it as one family or one group that's used to hanging out with one another. And then, kind of give you an idea, we do have one other. So essentially, this is the the public area here, we have various animals here, different reptiles, different, there's a bearded dragon. There's some snakes. There's some other things here. And then every now and then we have a little bit of overflow. So we're moving turtles around this morning. This is actually a Kemp's Ridley here. Like Donna said, this is the most endangered sea turtle in the world. This one came in from the National Seashore, and she is anemic. So her red blood cell count is really low. So what we're doing with her right now is we've got her on antibiotics. We also have her on medication to help her rebuild more red blood cells, and so that she eventually can get in deeper water. And we tried to put her in deeper water earlier this week, and she just wasn't strong enough to surface. So we do little swim trials like that where we'll try and get them to swim. If they can't swim or they can't surface, then we'll put them back in a shallower tank like this one until they're strong enough to swim. So, and sometimes this takes weeks, sometimes it takes months. It really depends on what the underlying problem was. For her, we don't really have an exact cause other than we know she's anemic. So it could be due to parasites, it could be due to some type of trauma we're unaware of, but we don't see any evidence of any external trauma on her. And this is, kind of some more. I'll give you one more thing here. So, okay, so outdoors, I can't go outside right now because the Wi-Fi is not going to reach. But essentially, this is a diagram of all of our hospital pools that are outside, and each tank and the number of turtles in each tank. So there's 17 there, 9, 1, a couple there, 4 in the first one. So, you can see we've got everybody spread out. The one that's got 17 in it, that's our largest tank outside, our largest hospital tank. And then you can see up there, that's the one that's here in the hospital. So the other thing that we do for the public is there's a lot of public education. So, as they're walking through the area here, there's lots of different things that they can read, whether it be on sea turtles or whether it be, one of our volunteers did this. She does skulls and prepares skulls, and so people can see the different types of skulls for different types of birds or whatnot. And then the other thing that we do is we do have a small, very small gift shop where people can buy T-shirts and whatnot, and all the money goes directly to the turtles. We do not have any paid staff. We have 0 individuals that get paid. Everyone that's here is a volunteer. So that's kind of the inside of the building. And this is our new, we just got this. This is our new weighing. That's our turtle stretcher, and it's called the Black Widow. It's our little anchor thing that we can help lift them up. Anyway, side note totally, but we're kind of excited. We just got it, so we don't have to lift up all these heavy turtles. All right. Okay, so I'm back. So I'm gonna go back in the office, and then what I will do is kind of update you, talk a little bit about. All right.
And please note that from the National Seashore, we send the most heavily injured or ill turtles to Tim, because to Dr. Tristan's facility. He's the closest of the 3 rehab facilities in the area, and he's the one with the veterinarian expertise right there on site. So he gets the hardship cases right off the bat. The easy ones you don't get, Tim.
I know. I won't give Donna credit. She sends me challenges on a regular basis. No question about it. So, but I think, and kind of leading into, you kind of see our facility, a little bit of it. You can certainly get online. We're on Facebook. We have a web page as well to get a little bit more insight and see some of our other animals and some of the things that we do here. But I think the biggest thing, and what I want to kind of refer back to, is the volunteerism. Is where do we get our volunteers? How do we make this happen? And I think one of the most difficult things that we deal with in the beginning is getting the word out there that we even exist, that there's even a place for sea turtles. And that is, to this day, still been a bit of a challenge, which thanks to Debbie, who's helped us out quite a bit. and getting the word out. And a lot of it's been word of mouth. You know, we don't have a budget for advertising and marketing. So how did we get our volunteers? The first thing we did is we went to the university. And we went to Texas A&M University here in Corpus Christi, and we said, hey, you know, there's a large marine animal program there, or just marine biology program in general. And so we went there first of all, and we said, okay, is there a club? They've got to have some kind of club there. So they had a sea turtle club, they had a dolphin club. So we approached those groups first and said, hey, we're starting this little project. We need some students. You guys want to help? And they said, absolutely. So we had a handful, maybe three to five students that were dedicated, got involved, helped us paint the building, helped us, remove plants and build structures and enclosures and, raise awareness, spread the word. Certainly, Donna helped as well as far as spreading the word and let people know we were here. Donna's got the same type of challenge we have, where you only have so much funding, so you need those volunteers. Those volunteers are the lifeline to allow your facility to run. So the university was probably our biggest, where we were able to utilize the most volunteers or obtain the most volunteers. At the same time, that's also been the same area that has continually supplied us with volunteers over the years. There's always more students coming in. There's always more, and at the same time, those students are going to leave. So those students are here for a period of time, and then they graduate, and then they go on to other places. So through those periods of time, the other group that we've kind of targeted, one is retirees. So there's a lot of people that come down and have moved to South Texas because they're retired, and they're looking for something to do. So that's a little bit more challenging group to get in contact with and find those people. But we've been able to do that mainly through social media and word of mouth. That's been the biggest place where we've been able to do, the most good. So, of course, when there are big events like the cold sunning event that you guys heard about and that we survived, I'll say, during the Colson event, people come out of the woodwork, and I think that is a huge asset. There was a community effort, there was a community drive, there was the community support to help. Everybody's like, hey, I saw a turtle. Hey, I saw a turtle. That turtle needs help. This, that, and the other. And so, you get a lot more people that are become more in tune, and that's where word of mouth and these groups knowing that we're here, knowing that we're available. Knowing to call Donna because she runs the straining network, and then Donna, deferring and saying, hey, that turtle needs to go to the Texas Sealife Center or one of the other facilities. She's able to direct traffic essentially at the National Seashore, and that helps us as well. So, but that's kind of it, a little bit of a summary. So I wanted to kind of kick it back to you guys a little bit in regards to what questions y'all had in regards to volunteerism or kind of how we do it. So I'm kind of leaving my portion here to be a little bit more interactive, if that's okay with you, Marty.
Yes, and I saw we gave you half an hour more time. That was just an error, but anyway, yes, I think this would be a good time for questions, and I think we could allow the guests to ask questions too, I think. But we'll let Sue kind of orchestrate the questions. Would you kind of?
Thank you. Oh,
Sorry, guys, that's gonna start going off here. All right, Sue, you're up, buddy.
okay. Thank you. I've been volunteer in Japan 2 years ago, and there are also a lot of turtle tank, but they also rescue the turtle, and also they collect the eggs, and when the turtle hatch, and they also feeding them in the tank. So the volunteer have to clean so many tanks every day. So I was curious about how many volunteers in your hospital, and do you need to clean the tank every day or very hard work every day?
Sure. So there is, we do water quality parameters. We check everything from salinity to pH in every single tank every day. So there's somebody that does water quality and checks checks the water on every single tank every day. Volunteer wise, so our volunteers do a couple of different things. I would say a couple. They would laugh at me. They're like, we do way more than a couple things, but they do a lot of stuff. But like, to give you a day in the life of a volunteer here, when they come in, the first objective they have is to walk the facility. And they walk the facility, they check on all the animals, make sure everybody's alive, make sure no one's in any kind of trouble, and make sure there's not any leak. The tanks don't have any leaks. The cages don't have any damage to them after a storm or anything like that. And then at that point in time, then we start prepping food. Now, I'm not forgetting about your question about how many volunteers. I'm just giving you a day in the life, and I'll tell you how many volunteers. Then they start prepping food. They do that usually for about an hour or so, 10 to 11, and then they start feeding out not just the turtles, but also the birds. And then throughout the day, starting at 10 o'clock, we're open to the public. So those same volunteers now are also giving tours throughout the day. The tours usually last about 30 minutes, and they go through not only what I just showed you indoors, but also the tanks that are, or the pools that are outside, and then also down our nature trail. And the tour, they talk a lot about conservation. They talk a lot about habitat restoration, and kind of, essentially what the general public can do to protect these species of sea turtle, but also, the overall environment and the, each little ecological niche of each one of these animals kind of inhabits. So all that work, and then at the end of near the end of the day, they, all of our birds get weighed periodically, usually 2 to 3 times a week. Our sea turtles get weighed every single week. Every Sunday, we take out every single sea turtle. We do an exam on them, and we weigh turtles every single week. And then based off of my exams, then if there's different medical procedures or different diagnostics or different treatments we need to implement, we do that at that time. Okay. So all this, to just kind of sum it up, volunteers, Monday and Tuesday, we're closed to the public. So we usually have only 2 to 3 volunteers on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday through Sunday, I'll say Wednesday through Saturday, we have anywhere from 3 to 5 volunteers. And then on Sunday, we usually have 5 to 6 because that's a big day where we're taking all the turtles out, weighing them. So it's a skinny crew. It's not, we don't have a lot of people, but the people that are here are hard workers, and they're great at what they do. They're great at what they do. Now, the good news in our growth over the last 8 years is we're finally to the point where we've kind of stashed away a little bit of money here and there every year, to the point where we may actually be able to hire our first employee coming up this fall. So, we'll be able to add one more person to the equation to help us do what we need to do. Because, if Donna keeps sending us all these turtles, we're going to continue to be very busy. So does that answer your question about number? So as far as our core group of volunteers, it's probably about 12 people total. But we don't all have all 12 people here at one point in time. It's spread out throughout the week. Where those 12 volunteers usually come together before a lot of the COVID things, we would do sea turtle releases, and we do sea turtle releases. We do invite all of our core volunteers, and they all get to go do sea turtle releases with us. So that's kind of one of the the cherry on the on top, where they get to see the benefits of all the work that they've done. So.
And we have about 100 volunteers, but similarly, they're stretched across the whole schedule, mostly working a half a day a week. But some work 30 hours, 40 hours a week.
And one other thing in regards to the volunteers, and is keeping track of their hours. I think that's very important is in regards to if you do have volunteers, keeping track of their hours, how many hours they're working. And even though you can't pay those individuals and they're volunteering their time, there are still some things you can do for them. And Donna gave a perfect example is after 10 hours, they get, you know, their official shirt that they're part of the volunteer group. We do something very similar here. They have to be here for a little bit longer period of time, and then they get one of these shirts. So, so keeping track of volunteers' time, it's kind of a neat little challenge for the volunteers. It's like who's got the most volunteer hours and how they have compared to, you know, it's kind of a little bit of a healthy competition.
I wanted to say something here to just remind everybody that Tim is a complete volunteer at the Sealife Center, and he's got to also spend some time earning a living.
That is true. I have a full-time job, and so this is a labor of love that I do with the Sealife Center. So I'm fortunate in the fact that my better half, Amanda, she essentially she's the director of rehabilitation. So she runs the facility while I'm not here, and while I'm out at my other job making money, so we can keep this place running.
And they're close together now. Proximity, the location, luckily.
Very, yeah.
Yeah.
Sue, your other friends here may ask questions if you would like them to.
I have a question. Is it okay that I ask? Okay. This question is not specific, not specific to anyone. It can be to Dr. Shaver and also Dr. Tristan. I'm interested. Do you have a specific team to train all these volunteers and then to every new volunteers that's incoming, or do you use your old volunteer to train your new volunteers? That is my question.
I'll let you start. Yeah.
Well, we use both. We've got I've got some employees that aid me, thank goodness, and they aid with the training for the large classroom or webinars. But the hands-on training sometimes is led by another volunteer, like Maureen. Tim knows Maureen. Maureen will show the egg packing training to other volunteers on the beach because she's done it for so long. So it's a little bit of both. And I do want to say that those volunteer shirts, that's very prestigious to people. They show off to their friends, like the students, when they've got a shirt. It means a lot to them to have that shirt and to be then in a leadership role. Also, those volunteer hours can be used as matching on some grants. So that's another reason why it's important to track those hours. And you may have some opportunities that are like that. And don't forget the value added up of those hours as a contribution on some of these, like for the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, some of those are internationally open. And remember that aspect of that. And also some of my volunteers will learn about Tim and he steals them from me. So that's another way he gets volunteers. But it's good. It's all good fun. Because like in the summer, there'll be my volunteers. And then after the summer season is done, they go volunteer for him. Which is great. They love this work. Some of them, I mean, it's they've been with for years. Some of them, you'll get some that are transients, but then some of these retirees, they'll stay with you for a decade or more. And that's just money in the bank because then they can become your trainers.
Okay, and as far as we also use two different methods, and I will, and I'll also compliment Donna. One thing she does before the cold season hits, she's usually orchestrated a cold sunning training where she has a lot of people that will come in, a lot of the general public also will come in, and she'll have a training period for them for some of these cold sunning events we've had. So she has the capacity to be able to do some of these larger training events for volunteers. Like I said, very similar to Donna, we use both methods. We have the primary method we use is on-site training, where we have volunteers that are previously trained or have been with us a long time, anywhere from 6 years or more, and they're kind of our lead individuals to train the new volunteers that come in. Like any volunteer situation, their skill levels are different. Their backgrounds are different. So based off of what their comfort level is and our comfort level with them, we allow them to do a certain number of things. There are some things that the volunteers cannot do legally. Doing certain medical procedures or drawing blood from turtles, or there are certain things that due to our permitting, they're just not allowed to do it. So it's something where myself or Amanda, who's, like I said, is a licensed veterinary technician, she's doing some of those procedures, or I'm doing them. So we do that kind of type of training where we utilize our volunteers that have been here for an extended period of time to train new volunteers. But the other thing that we do is periodically we will have a volunteer meeting. And when we have these volunteer meetings, we're usually doing some type of training during those meetings. So whether it be something like discussing, different types of hawks that we see and giving some natural history and background on them, or talking about the nesting season and kind of, relaying some information that, like Donna was telling you guys about earlier about Kemp's Ridleys and their nesting. Or we may talk about some medical procedures that are going on, or something to kind of, essentially what we're doing is giving them more insight into what's going on in the facility, but also training them and educating them at the same time.
Thank you. Thank you.
May I also ask some questions?
Shoot, go for it.
Okay, hi. Thank you for the introduce. It's really nice talk, both of you. Yeah, and I've learned a lot. And I have actually two questions. The first one is, what is the retention of the volunteers? Like, for example, how long do they stay in this program? Yeah, and how do you guys to encourage them to, keep the passionate about this project?
That's a great question. And I think, and I'll answer, then I'm going to pass it on to Donna because I want to hear her answer too. Retention of volunteers is very challenging. The biggest thing is many times these individuals that want to work with turtles, but they love turtles, but maybe they don't want to do all the cleaning the pools and prepping the food and all the things that come. So there is usually we get these volunteers in, we have them do the dirty work first, because they can't go straight in and just start working with the turtle. So there's some of that dirty work they have to put in their time. Every volunteer has done it. So because of that, it's a sink or swim pretty fast program. And what I mean by that is they're like, hey, I'm ready to get cleaning. I'm ready to keep doing my work until I get to that point. Or they say, no, this is just not for me. And they'll show up one day and then they won't come back. So that does happen, and it does happen with volunteers. What we do have a volunteer application that they have to fill out. We do talk with them extensively before they volunteer to explain to them that this isn't just, come in and play with the turtles. There is a lot of work, a lot of work that goes along with it. There are some things that we do to retain those volunteers that are really good. To lead into your second question, about retaining volunteers. And what we do is we can't do much. We can't pay them. So we do some things that are more morale boosters, especially during, especially when COVID was over, during 2020, we would have small, because it's a very small group. We're all around each other. We're not around anybody else. We were able to do small cookouts. So we would, cook out for everybody one afternoon, and everybody would come, and we would, have, picnic tables, and we would cook food for everybody, and everybody would eat.
Oh, oh,
There are occasions where I will take, thank goodness it's a small group, because I couldn't do this if I had the number of volunteers Donna has, but sometimes I'll take the small group on like a Sunday when it's our big day where we're weighing turtles. I'll take them all to dinner, things like that. So
I've
there's
seen
some
that.
morale. And so there's some things, and I will tell you, one of the biggest things for the volunteers, and one of the simplest things you can do, is say thank you.
That's right.
It doesn't sound like much, but if you, especially with those new volunteers, because a lot of times they don't think they're being noticed. They don't, and you go over and you go. This is something I do very frequently with our volunteers because we have such good volunteers. And I'll go over and I say, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'll be like, "What? Nothing. I'm just helping." I was like, "Okay, I just want to tell you thank you for being here today because this is really helpful." That simple gesture goes such a long, long way. And just a pat on the back and a thank you, that makes a big difference. So, Donna, how do you retain your volunteers?
Well, we have very similar. Some will go on a patrol or two and then just drop out. That's it. Or the same thing with dispatching or any job for that matter. They just find out it's not for them. And I would rather that they do that than continue on and not really be happy and feel like it's a good use of their time. We've had others that, like I said, have stayed more than a decade, and they end up leaving only because their family moves away, or they just become too frail to be able to do the job anymore, because the patrolling is very physical. They have to be out for half a day in the sun, a long drive, bumpy, etc. To thank them, when pre-COVID, we'd have a volunteer appreciation gathering at the end of the nesting and patrol season. And we'd have snacks and a cake, and we'd pass out certificates. And the people like those certificates. A lot of them will frame them, and it's just printed out on our printer, but I sign and the superintendent signs it, and it recognizes them as a volunteer with the program, and then it gives the year. And then we'll give them a gift at the end of the year. If they've done, I think it's more than 15 hours or 20 hours, they'll get the annual gift. And that's usually another shirt, a commemorative shirt for the year. To do the patrols after they've done their 10 hours, they get one of the volunteer shirts that show they're part of the program. And that doesn't have an annual designation on it. It's just a general, so they're recognizable. But the gift at the end of the year is a unique for that particular year. It's on there. And I'm sorry, because I've got a thing here for Tim. Now they won't tell me whether it's alive or dead. They said they've got a turtle with a tag on it that's down island, and I'm asked. Oh, it is alive, Tim. So you may see her.
Okay.
But she's 56 miles down the beach. So it's all by beach driving. So it'll be probably three hours before we get. She's missing part of her right front flipper, but it's fully healed. Anyway, she's up on the beach. When they're on the beach like that, there's something wrong with them. You don't just put them back in. But the thank you is critical. Being nice to them and then listening to them about why they can't come in. Usually, there's a family issue. Somebody's graduating. You got to go to that, or a birthday party. So, but you've got to be careful, because you could spend your whole day listening to each one of them. So it's a balance of being nice, thanking, being interested in them, but then having to, you know, make an exit at some point so you can go on to your other work. But I just love my volunteers, and I wish I could talk to them longer. Spend my whole day doing that and hearing about, most of them had a whole career beforehand. And they bring with them all those talents of either being a manager at Kroger's, one of them, and or all kinds of different fields, English teacher. Then bring that talent to you. What a blessing. And if you can, one of the problems is managing them. Is I really need somebody to manage the volunteer program. It's a full-time thing, but yet I don't have the money for a manager. I got to pay for these other tasks. So they're a benefit, but they do take some time.
Yeah, luckily I've got that person right here.
Aha. Hi, Amanda.
That's my better half, and she runs the program when I'm not here. So she just walked in, and their day's fixing to get started here in a little bit. So yeah.
And you have to, and you got to realize that some of the volunteers are clunkers, and they can cause you problems. And some of them may think they know how to do it better than you do. And so you've got to weed that out. And they could complain. And the last thing, luckily Tim's the boss, so they don't have much to complain to above Tim. But for me, it's the superintendent, and that's not good. I don't want that to happen. So I've got to, it's a little bit stressful at times because I've got to tamp that down before it could get me in trouble. And sometimes in the field too, they can interact with the public and cause problems. So we have to teach them rules of behavior so they don't sexually harass my young, beautiful technicians. They're 22 years old, and, they may be, their 40s or older and whatnot. And you can go through that kind of training that we get now annually, and it's really enforced and it's important. I went through sexual harassment as a young lady, and I don't want that to happen to my young people. So you've got to teach them behavior as well as the job. At least that's what I found. So
I had a question for the people from Taiwan. In the United States, volunteerism is kind of a thing that is very common. In the Boy Scouts, you're taught to do a good turn, help somebody every day. And so, but is that part of the culture in Taiwan to be a volunteer, or is that something that's not culturally done? Sue?
I think in Taiwan, most of people, they want to do the volunteer. Like in our island, some people do the beach cleanup, and some locals, they also doing the underwater cleanup.
That's great.
Yeah. So I think in Taiwan, most of people, they like to volunteering.
That's good.
So it's not hard to find volunteers then, is that right?
Not really.
Yeah,
We even encounter some people, like they ask for if there's any work, if they can help. Even though we are not looking for volunteers, some people, they even ask us if we need any help.
I think, for the volunteers, I think that the work in the Sea Turtle Life Center or the nesting beach is really like hands-on experience, and that's really attractive. And these kind of experience are really rare in Taiwan. And for example, for our program, most of the work might be behind the computer, more like the IT work or organizing the data. So this part of volunteers work is not so, appealing. So how about you guys? Do you have this kind of problems, and how you do you have these kind of volunteers as well?
We can have, like I say, there's a place for everyone in our volunteer program. We have a lot of needs, and some of it is IT work, and some people will want to do that. But now with the government, they've got to go through a background check before they can get their identification card to use the computer. So it involves more than just putting somebody at the computer to enter data, but some want to do that. But there are some that they just want to do the hands-on. They don't want to clean the boxes. That's part of it. And you can't have your volunteers run your program, like take over and say, I want to do this, I'm not want to do this, and you shouldn't be doing it this way. You have to maintain that you're in charge, and this is the job. And you said you were going to do it, so we need you to do it. And all these are important needs, but don't try to force something on someone that's not a good fit.
I think that's a very good point, definitely, that Donna makes. And, you know, the one thing about having someone do IT and data entry and things like that for us is that you want to make sure they're entering all that data correctly. And so there's a lot of training that goes into that before you can trust someone to enter all that data. Because at the end of the year, when I turn my report in, or Amanda turns the report in to Donna, we'll make sure it's correct. You know,
you have to verify. You've got to check back in on them. Don't just trust everything's going to be done perfectly.
But, you know, and the other thing too is, and Donna alluded to this just a second ago, is, you know, every person that comes in and this is what I've learned about volunteers, is they each have their own talents. You have to find out what those talents are. And so it's like, you know, if you got somebody that's really good at something and you make them do something they're not good at, they're not happy because they're not doing a good job. You're not happy because they're not doing a good job, and it's just not a good fit. But if you find something where they fit and they do really well at, they excel at it, so they're productive. Here you go. Here's the phone. All right. They're productive.
Is that us?
You're happy with what they're producing, and ultimately you get a better product at the end. So and so that takes some work. If you're running a volunteer organization or a volunteer group or even a business, it's finding those talents and trying to ferret out those talents for those individuals, and then kind of capitalizing on those talents. And so that's just a overall business model where, you know, what are you good at? What are you really good at? Okay, great. Let's get you doing that, because you're going to be even better. And then I'm going to be happier, and then you're going to be happier. And overall, it's a win-win.
And we have an application where we ask for, just briefly, what's their background, but also we have check boxes of different opportunities to get involved in, so they can check what they're interested in. And we try to match them up to the best we can, but time's limited too. So sometimes and then we'll send out an email to them saying, well, we've got this other task we need to have done. We need to put up the corral 40 miles down the beach. We need some people that are strong that can spend, you know, a day down there. And they'll write in and say, oh, I can do it. Oh, I'd like to do that. Sometimes with dead turtles, though, we don't get that many takers. They smell bad.
Okay.
But there's some people, that's what they want to do too. You just have to find that and assign them in.
Okay, thank you. To find the right people and do the right thing for them.
Oop.
So we've come to the end of this, Tim's 45-minute section. It doesn't say that on the show, but so we're kind of this is sort of a closing session, and I'm particularly want to focus with you, Sue, about so far, how we doing, and as far as your time here in the United States, and are you? I don't know what your kind of wondered if you've had any change in opinions of Americans or the United States since you've been here, and how's it going?
For me, it was first time to join like this program. So for me, everything is quite interesting. And because I've never been to Texas, so this time I can know more about Texas and know about sea turtles in Texas. I was so appreciate you guys sharing about experience. And can I have one more question for both of you? Because in Taiwan, some people asking me why sea turtle? So many marine lives in the ocean. Why sea turtles? And my answer is because I'm living on this island, and every time I get into water, and I can see the turtles. They just living there. So I think we all living together in this environment. So that's my answer. So I wanna ask in both of you why sea turtle.
Go ahead, Tim.
All right. I have a special affinity for reptiles in general. I as a kid, I liked reptiles. As an adult, I still like reptiles. I have reptiles of my own, not just turtles, but lizards and snakes. Their anatomy, physiology, natural history just significantly interests me. Not just on a professional level as work and as a job, but also on a personal level, just having them, owning them, appreciating them in the wild. And then where that transition to sea turtles comes from is one of my first jobs when I got out of vet school was in the Florida Keys. Florida Keys is a beautiful place, and they also have a sea turtle hospital there called Marathon Sea Turtle Hospital. And so I love the ocean. That's why I live on the coast. And so there was a natural fit there between sea turtles being reptiles. And so I could be by the ocean and work with reptiles. And so it was a perfect fit for me to work with sea turtles. So that's kind of a little history there of why sea turtles for me. The other thing that I enjoy about sea turtles is, from a medical standpoint, is they're a little box of mystery. And from a medical perspective, whether there's some type of medical problem, there's a surgical problem, there's this little box, and you got to figure out what's going on inside that little box. And for me, I like the challenge.
Well, for me, as a child, they used to allow this, 2 little pet red ear sliders. And I really enjoyed having those. And when I went to University of Cornell, I was interested in threatened and endangered species management. That's what I wanted to do with my career. And I read about the program at Padre Island National Seashore. And I thought, well, that sounds like a great opportunity, a good fit for what I'm interested in. And I came down here and saw my first sea turtle I'd ever seen in the wild. And there weren't many in the wild then. So it wasn't like you could go out and see them and appreciate them out there swimming. But I was put in interacting with those that were there through the eggs that we got from Mexico and the hatchlings I released, driving the hatchlings to Galveston and seeing them in the facility there. And then also the stranded turtles I was able to interact with. And I learned about the plight of the Kemp's Ridley again, and how humans almost decimated, almost obliterated this magnificent species in one generation because of our short-sightedness. And I felt an obligation, who were we to end this species that had been around for millions of years. And I wanted to do what I could to try to save these animals that were greatly depleted due to humans. And it's wonderful to see them now. You go to Packard Channel and Mansfield Channel, you can see the green turtles swimming around, and we've got our own natural aquarium now, but we didn't when I first started. When I first started here, you'd go into the little stores where they sell souvenirs. You wouldn't see anything related to sea turtles. Nobody knew anything about sea turtles here. And now the Kemp's Ridley has become emblematic for Padre Island National Seashore and iconic. There's a picture of the Kemp's Ridley on the water tower as you come towards the National Seashore. Sculptures that are in parks. People have adopted they know now that sea turtles are part of our ecosystem here, our beloved community, and they're learning to share the environment with them. And it's a challenge for sure. It's still a challenge, but I feel like it's our for me, I believed it was our moral obligation to try to do what we could to restore them because humans caused their problems. It wasn't a natural extinction that was happening for any of them. So there've been a lot of challenges over time, and some that weren't easy at all. I had 2 times where people came after me trying to get me fired for the work I was doing, the shrimpers once, and then about the speed limit here. We had the highest speed limit on the beach of any beach in the state of Texas. And we had we're a national park. Why do we the highest of anybody? And also from the danger standpoint to humans, because you can't hear the vehicles coming with the sound of the surf. And so somebody's dog was just hit the other day. And so we had an effort that reduced it during the heavy visitation and nesting season to what it is in the rest of the state, 15 miles per hour. Well, boy, howdy, they wanted me out of here. They blamed it on me, even though it was in large part a human safety issue. And it was very contentious. So, you had to stand up the courage, your convictions, and your data. We had data, as background. So it hasn't been easy, but it's still what I wanted to dedicate my career and my life to.
So Sue, I wanted to mention one thing, and that when we turn this thing off here in a few minutes, that's not the end. That both Tim and Donna are kind of wedded to you, and if you have questions in the future, you're welcome to contact them, and because you're part of the team.
Yes, absolutely. We'd be glad to provide any additional help or information that you may think of a question a few hours from now. You'd send an email or call on the phone. We can have another Zoom call with you. We're your Texas friends now.
Also, if you have any question or you want to know more about Taiwan, you're welcome. You can just email us, and we can share more about the sea turtles of Taiwan also. Thank you.
So on a different topic, the cover on the Economist magazine, this last issue was, "What is the most dangerous place in the world?" That was the cover. And they said it's Taiwan. So we are all hoping that you guys can live across the Taiwan Straits in peace and harmony, and
Yes, absolutely.
And that all goes well.
Yes. That was one of the first things I thought about, was the situation there. So good luck with all of that. It can't be easy for you. And some people may even ask you, we got this during the poor economy. Well, why do you care about turtles when people can't eat? And some people may say to you, well, why do you care about turtles when our country's in such, has some problems?
So is there anything, Sue, this is this is all about you. Is there anything more you'd like to ask or say?
Thank you for everything.
And thank you.
Our pleasure.
I'll add just briefly that all of our people here have seen those wonderful photographs that you have taken. Quite impressive. And I know Debbie, as a photographer, I'm sure was very interested in seeing those. Debbie, do you take underwater photos by any chance?
No, I don't. I know one person here who does, but I'm super impressed by all of your underwater work. That's way more complicated than what I do. I noticed that your Facebook group has thousands and thousands of followers. Do they all take pictures and put them so you have lots and lots of photos to compare?
Are you asking Sue?
Yes.
Okay.
Or any of the Taiwanese turtle people.
I think in our groups, because in Taiwan so many divers, they have their underwater cameras, so we can easier to see the underwater photos in Taiwan now, especially the young people. They love to check in underwater photos now in Taiwan and post on the social media.
Right.
So we can see a lot of underwater photos here in Taiwan. Yeah.
They're beautiful. You're very good.
Thank you.
I did mention that Debbie and her friends are putting together a tour, a video tour of Corpus Christi. State Department asked us to do, all of us to do that. And Henry, I'll be sending that to you. Well, actually, we're not going to send it to you. It'll be on our YouTube channel for anybody available. And I think it's going to, tell us what it's going to be, Debbie.
We originally looked around at the organizations that already exist in Corpus Christi, but nobody had quite what we wanted. Some videos were about education, and some were about tourism, and some were about downtown, and some were about industry, but nothing pulled all of that together. So that's what we tried to do. We wrote a script, and we had a local celebrity read. She's a singer who has a morning television show, and she was on The Voice. I don't know if you people watch The Voice. Yeah, Clarissa Cerna.
Clarissa Cerna, yep.
She did the voiceover for us.
Great.
And then we got video clips donated from every major organization in town. And then it turns out it's a lot of work to pull all the clips out of all those videos, all the, a few seconds here, a few seconds there. But I have two people who are very good at what they do and know what they're doing. I don't know much about that part of it. And they have music and fade in and fade out, and they're putting it all together. So they're trying to finish that up. We're trying to just fill in some of the holes. And then the gallery of photos that I put in the chat, they're also using that to fill in some of the holes too. So hopefully that will be done soon, and I'll put that on our channel, and then anybody will have access to that.
That's great.
Marty, if you could send a link to that so that I'll be able to identify it, I'll pass it on to our visitors. And
so the link is you go to YouTube and just go to the World Affairs Council of South Texas.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not on there.
We can send that to you too directly, but yeah, and I'll have it on our Facebook page as well.
Did you include the National Seashore and the turtles?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We talked about how we are the longest undeveloped barrier island in the world, and we talked about the sea turtle program.
Great.
And we talked about birds and our bridge and our port and our cultural diversity and all kinds of things.
Good.
And I'm sure we missed a lot. Selena, we had to mention Selena.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to say something to you about Corpus Christi, to the group here. We are, of course, as you know, on the Gulf of Mexico. We're one.
Do you have keys?
What?
I'm sorry. I've got somebody knocking at my door, probably about that stranded turtle.
Okay. So we are on the Gulf of Mexico. We're becoming the energy port of the Americas, with more energy products going in and out of our port than any other port in North or South America. We have huge amounts of pipelines and things like that that are bringing to Corpus Christi oil, crude oil and gas, natural gas. And we soon will have the largest producer of liquid natural gas in the world here at our Shaver plant. They convert natural gas into liquid and put it on ships and send it all over the world. And so because of this, we are experiencing what's called nonlinear change. You know, if things go along like this, if you're here and you wonder what the future is going to look like, you're going to look back here. If you're here, you can look back here to guess where you're going to be here, but that's where we are. So we're having huge numbers of billion-dollar industrial plants coming here. We in the next within 20 years or less, we will be the largest producer of steel in the United States, for goodness sakes, because instead of making it with coal like they did in Pittsburgh, and we're going to do it with electric arc furnaces. And so we have the largest installed base of wind energy in the United States here.
A lot of wind turbines.
Huh? Wind.
So we have a lot of wind turbines. Yep.
Wind turbines. And and people are moving from, businesses are moving from California to Texas because it's a better place to do business. And so our sleepy little Corpus Christi that's been not changing very much is changing very fast, and we're having problems with affordable housing. We're having trouble with welders. You know, if you could weld and do overtime, you could earn $100,000 a year here right now. And so we're going through a lot of change, and Texans are pretty proud of their state and pretty proud of the United States. You want to add anything more, Deb, about that? And does anybody else have anything more we need to say? Well, I think we'll shut it down. Henry, could you stick around a minute or two? Huh?
Yes.
Okay, so why don't the rest of you say goodbye? And I want to thank you all for your participation. Deb, you can stay on too. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you
Yes.
very much. It's good to see you, Debbie. Been a long time.
I know. Let me
Thank
know if
you
you
all.
need anything.
All of you.
Let me know if you need any photography. I'll come out.
Send
Oh,
your-
great.
bring
Same
your-
to you, Tim.
You know, I forgot one thing to say. We have in our city here, we have Texas A&M University, Corpus Christi. If you have children that want to go to the university, if they come here and they spend a little time in our English as a second language program, then they can go to the university at the Texas rate instead of out of state rate.
Oh, that's
And we
nice.
have a whole lot of international students here.
And in Kingsville, A&M Kingsville too.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks very
Thank
much
you.
for